This is Job Search Reality. Todd Brooks from Athens, GA, sharing the truth about the ups and downs of trying to find your place. The interviews, the waiting game, the hopes and doubts we all face, but I keep moving forward every day here in Athens, GA.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. I'm your host, Todd Brooks, coming to you from Athens, Georgia. Whether you're driving to work, walking the dog, at the gym, or maybe you're sitting in front of your computer filling out yet another job application, I'm really glad that you're here. This podcast exists for one simple reason, and that's to talk honestly about today's job market. We want to talk honestly and freely about it because it's definitely one of the most complicated things going on in today's current economy. Not from the perspective of economists, not from politicians, not from Fortune 500 CEOs, but from the perspective of the people actually living it. The people sending applications, waiting for interviews, checking email 10 times a day, wondering why nobody ever calls. If that's you, trust me, you're not alone. This week, I wasn't reading articles from the Wall Street Journal. I wasn't reading AI reports. I wasn't following breaking technology news. Instead, I opened Threads. And for the next 30 minutes, I felt like I had walked into the world's largest support group. Post after post, person after person, telling almost exactly the same story. I've applied to hundreds of jobs. I keep getting interviews, but never an offer. I'm overqualified. I'm underqualified. I'm exhausted. I'm losing hope. I'm sick of being unemployed. As I kept scrolling, I realized something. These weren't isolated stories. These weren't people making excuses. These were complete strangers, living in different states, working in different industries, yet describing almost exactly the same experience. And that's when I knew this needed to be our next podcast. Now, before we get too serious, can we laugh together for just a moment? Okay? Just laugh together for just a minute. Because honestly, if we don't laugh, we'll probably cry. I saw one person write that they've applied for over 400 jobs. 400 jobs! At that point, I think LinkedIn should send you a loyalty badge. Congratulations. You've unlocked platinum applicant status as a reward. They should get that to you as a reward. Your rejection emails will now arrive 30% faster. Or how about this one? Someone wrote they were on round 3 of 4 interviews. 4 interviews. At that point, are we applying for a job or trying to join the Avengers? I'm expecting Nick Fury to walk into interview number 4 and say, "We've been watching you." The reason these jokes are funny is because there's truth behind them. The hiring process has changed dramatically. 5 years ago, 2 interviews might have been considered a lot. Today, 3 or 4. Sometimes even 5 interviews have become normal. Weeks go by, sometimes months. Meanwhile, bills don't stop coming, rent doesn't stop, the mortgage doesn't stop, life certainly doesn't stop, and every day you're wondering, did they make a decision? As many of you know, I've been documenting my own job search for months now. I've experienced the excitement of getting an interview. I've experienced the disappointment of hearing nothing afterward. I've walked out of interviews thinking, I think that went really well, only to never receive another phone call. I've refreshed my email, checked my voicemail, watched my phone, wondering if today could finally be the day. So when I read those Threads posts, they don't feel like strangers. They feel familiar. Maybe that's why they hit me so hard, because behind every post, there's a real person. Someone questioning themselves. Someone wondering whether they've somehow become unemployable. Someone trying to stay positive while watching savings disappear. I don't think enough people are talking about that part. And this brings me to something that happened to me this week. It wasn't a job interview. It wasn't a rejection email. It wasn't a recruiter calling. It was Facebook. I received an automated email that simply said, "You have been removed from full control over this Facebook page." Immediately, I knew exactly what page it was. It was the Facebook page for the company where I worked before my career changed. And for a split second, I actually laughed for just a moment. It was one of those ha-ha moments. I thought, well, someone finally remembered I existed. Unfortunately, that wasn't exactly the email I had been hoping for, but then something unexpected happened. That one automated email brought back a flood of emotions. Not because I wanted access to the page, because I didn't. It wasn't about Facebook. It wasn't about social media. It was about what that email represented. It's about what that email represented. Nearly 9 months had passed. Life had moved on. The company had moved on. And in that moment, I realized maybe it was time for me to move forward too. We often imagine closure as something dramatic. A conversation, an apology, a final meeting, and sometimes closure arrives as a simple automated email. No emotion, no explanation, just a notification, and somehow that was enough to remind me that chapter is over. Not forgotten, not erased. I'm still very proud of everything that I did for that company. I think that company still has some fond memories of me and is proud of some of the things I did for them. So it's not a race. It's just finished. And maybe that's okay, because if I've learned anything during this journey, is that you can't start writing the next chapter if you're constantly rereading the last one. When we come back, we're going to talk about the heartbreaking Threads post that inspired today's episode. Hundreds of applications, dozens of interviews, no job offers. Why are so many qualified people telling exactly the same story? Stay with us. Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Before the break, I shared a personal story about an email that unexpectedly reminded me of a chapter of my career that finally came to an end. And here's what I realized after reading all those Threads posts this week. That feeling, it isn't unique to me. Thousands of people are carrying around emotions they never expected to have. Not because they don't want to work, but because they can't seem to find someone willing to give them an opportunity. As I kept scrolling through Threads, I kept noticing something. The names were different, the profile pictures were different, the careers were different, but the stories, almost identical. One person wrote that they'd submitted hundreds of applications. Another said they had gone through multiple rounds of interviews and still didn't receive an offer. Someone else admitted they were beginning to question whether they would ever work again. And the one that really stuck with me simply said, "I don't know how to deal with not being able to get a job." Read that again. Not, "I don't know how to find the perfect job." Not, "I don't know how to negotiate a higher salary." Just, "I don't know how to deal with not being able to get a job." That sentence says so much, because after enough rejection, it stops feeling like you're looking for work, and it starts feeling like you're questioning your own value. I want to say something directly to anyone listening who's unemployed right now. Not getting hired does not mean you have nothing to offer. I think that's one of the biggest lies this process tells us. After enough rejection emails, it's easy to think, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too inexperienced. Maybe I'm asking for too much money. Maybe nobody wants me anymore. Those thoughts are real, and they're very painful. But they're also incomplete, because hiring decisions are influenced by so many things that you never see. Maybe there was an internal candidate. This happens so often. Maybe funding changed. Maybe the position was frozen. Maybe another applicant had experience that matched the role a little more closely. Maybe the company changed direction entirely. You don't know, and that's one of the hardest parts. You rarely get an explanation. Can I tell you something I've learned? Sometimes waiting is harder than hearing no. At least when someone says no, you know, and then you can just move on. But when days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and I think for some people months are turning into a year, and 2 years and maybe several years, you're constantly asking yourself, should I still be hopeful? Did they forget about me? Should I follow up again? Am I bothering them? It's just emotionally exhausting. But you know what's funny? We've all become detectives during the job search. It's a new job, actually. A recruiter says, we'll be in touch soon. Immediately, we're analyzing every word. What exactly does soon mean? Tomorrow? Next week? Before retirement? And then you check your email. Nothing. You refresh it. Still nothing. You check LinkedIn. Nothing there either. Then your phone buzzes. Your heart skips a beat. This is it. Nope. It's your dentist reminding you that it's time for a cleaning. Or your cell phone company reminding you that your bill is due. I don't know about you, but I've reached the point where if my phone rings from an unknown number, I'm already halfway through accepting the job before I answer. One thing I actually appreciate about Threads is this. People aren't pretending everything is perfect. Social media has often been a highlight reel. Promotions, vacations, new cars, dream jobs, perfect lives. Threads feel different. People are saying, I'm struggling. I'm discouraged. I need advice. I just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. And honestly, I think that's healthy. Because once someone admits they're struggling, other people begin saying, me too. Suddenly, you're not alone anymore. If you're listening today, I want you to hear this. You are not your resume. You are not your LinkedIn profile. You are not your last interview. You are not your unemployment status. You are certainly not defined by the number of rejection emails sitting in your inbox. You're a person with experience, a person with skills, a person with potential, and sometimes the hiring process has a way of making us forget that. When we come back, we're going to ask a difficult question. Is the hiring process itself becoming part of the problem? Why are people going through 4, 5, or even 6 interviews? Why are qualified candidates submitting hundreds of applications? And why do so many people feel like they're shouting into the void? We'll talk about next on the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Today we're talking about something that's affecting millions of people. Not just unemployment, but the experience of trying to become employed. Because after reading dozens of posts this week, I kept asking myself one question. Has looking for a job become harder than actually doing the job? I know that sounds like a strange question, but hear me out. I remember when applying for a job meant walking into a business, filling out an application, maybe dropping off a resume, and if they were interested, someone called you. Today, first you upload your resume, then you create an account, then you manually type everything that's already on your resume, which is extremely frustrating. Then you answer 40 questions. Then you complete a personality assessment. Then you upload your resume again, just in case the first resume wasn't resume enough. By the time you're finished, you're not sure you've applied for a job, or even you're not sure if you applied for a job or accidentally enrolled in college. That's scary. Then comes the interview process. One interview, then another, then another, then another. At some point, you're sitting there thinking, should I start bringing snacks? Because apparently we're going to be here for a while. We're able to be here for a while. I saw someone on Threads say they had gone through 5 interviews for one position. 5! I don't know about you, but after interview number 3, I'm expecting someone to walk in and say, congratulations, you've made it to the bonus round. That's another phrase that's becoming more common. And it's called ghost jobs. Now, to be fair, not every position people call a ghost job is actually fake. Sometimes companies keep listings open while they're hiring. Sometimes positions are paused because budgets change. Sometimes they're collecting applications for future openings. There can be legitimate reasons, but here's the problem. From the applicant's perspective, it often feels like you're sending applications into outer space. No response, no update, no rejection, just silence. And after enough silence, you start wondering if anyone ever saw your application at all. Let's talk about something every job seeker has heard about, the applicant tracking system, or we simply abbreviate it ATS. or as many job seekers like to call it, the robot. Now, I understand why companies use these systems. If 800 people apply for one job, no hiring manager can realistically read every resume immediately. Technology helps organize those applications. That to me makes sense. But here's where frustration begins. Applicants often feel like they've never even reached a human being. And it's hard not to wonder, did a computer reject me before anyone ever learned who I am? Whether that's what happened or not, that's how many people feel, and feelings do matter because perception shapes the job search experience. And here's something I don't think we talk about enough. Every rejection takes a tiny bite out of your confidence. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. Think about it for a second. You spend hours updating your resume, researching the company, preparing for interviews, buying new clothes, practicing answers, driving across town, giving it everything you've got, then nothing. No explanation, no feedback, no idea what happened. Do that once, you recover. Do it 20 times, it starts changing how you see yourself. That's why I believe employers have more influence than they realize. Sometimes a simple email saying, "We appreciated meeting you, but we've decided to move on in another direction," is so much better than saying nothing at all. Closure matters. Respect matters. Communication matters. I would rather have an automated rejection email come to me than not hear anything at all, because I'm always going to wonder. And it could be 3 months later and I'm still wondering, is that job still open? You just don't know. Now, I also want to be fair. Let's give employers some credit too, because I don't think employers are villains. Many hiring managers are overwhelmed. I was a hiring manager. I was overwhelmed at times during this whole process when I was trying to find a hire for my customer service team. You know, we're trying to fill positions, review hundreds of applications. You know, I think I've mentioned before on the show that I always played the numbers game. I liked interviewing a bunch of people. So usually I would do somewhere between 28 and 35 interviews. But I might get 200 applications and have to weed people out before I would get to the 35 candidates I wanted to interview. And most of those 35 candidates weren't great either. It's just they offered a little bit more than the other 160 applicants that I may have received for the position. So we're trying to fill positions, review hundreds of applications, balance budgets. I didn't do that so much because I knew what we were going to pay our people. Manage employees is what I was doing. Meet deadlines, that was me. The hiring process is difficult from those individual sides too. That's why I don't think this is about blaming employers. I think it's about improving communication. Imagine how much better this process could feel if applicants simply knew where they stood. A quick update, a realistic timeline, a simple, we're still interviewing candidates. That alone would reduce so much anxiety. As I've gone through my own search, I've realized something. The hardest part isn't rejection. The hardest part is uncertainty. Not knowing, waiting, wondering, trying to read meaning into every email, every missed phone call, every day that passes without hearing anything. I've been there. I'm going through it now. And if you're listening today, there's a good chance that you've been there too. You know you've been job searching too long when you get excited about any email notification. Your phone buzzes, you grab it immediately. This has to be the recruiter. Nope. It's your grocery store letting you know avocados are on sale. At this point, my grocery store checks in on me more often than some recruiters do. When we come back, I want to talk about something that actually gives me hope. Because in the middle of all those heartbreaking Threads posts, I've noticed something else. People encouraging complete strangers. People celebrating job offers they didn't receive themselves. People reminding each other not to give up. In a strange way, social media has become one of the biggest support groups for unemployed workers. And I think that's a story worth telling. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know I like to end on a hopeful note. Not because I think everything is perfect, but because I believe that if we're going to spend 30 minutes talking about problems, then we should spend some time talking about solutions as well. And as strange as it sounds, I found a little hope this week while scrolling through threads. At first glance, you see people venting, people frustrated, people exhausted, people wondering how much longer they can keep doing this. But if you read the comments, something else starts happening. One person says, "Don't give up." Another shares a company that's hiring. Someone else rewrites another person's resume. A recruiter jumps into the conversation and offers advice. A hiring manager explains what they look for. People who have never met helping each other. No expectation of getting anything in return. Just people trying to lift other people up. And honestly, I think we need more of that. One thing I've learned during my own job search is this. Success isn't always about finding the perfect resume. Sometimes it's about the people willing to help you. A former coworker who recommends you, a friend who sends you a job posting, someone who takes 10 minutes to look over your resume, or even someone online who simply says, "I've been there too." Sometimes those words mean more than people realize, because when you're struggling, hope often comes from knowing you're not struggling by yourself. One of my favorite things to read online isn't someone announcing they got promoted. It's someone saying, "I finally got the job." Those 4 words. I finally got the job. Really 5 words. You can almost feel the relief through the screen. You know, there were probably months of rejection before they wrote that post. Applications, interviews, sleepless nights, self-doubt, and then one phone call changes everything. It's a reminder that sometimes the next yes is closer than we think. I've also learned something else. You have to protect your sense of humor, because this process will test your patience. So for example, have you noticed every company says, "We're looking for someone who can work in a fast-paced environment"? I've reached the point where I want to reply, "Perfect. I've been refreshing my email every 5 minutes for months. I think I'm qualified." Or my personal favorite, "We're looking for a rock star. Listen, I'm just trying to pay my electric bill. If you're looking for a rock star, you may have posted this job in the wrong place." You know, when I started the Job Search reality series, I thought it was going to be about my journey. But somewhere along the way, it became something bigger. It became about our journey. Every message I receive, every comment, every Threads post, every email reminds me that thousands of people are navigating the same uncertainty. Different cities, different careers, different backgrounds, but they have the same questions. When will someone finally give me a chance? And that's why I want this podcast to be more than career advice. I want it to be a place where people feel understood, where we can celebrate victories together, laugh at the ridiculous parts of the hiring process, and encourage each other through the difficult moments. If you know someone who's looking for work, reach out, send them a text, give them a call, ask how they're doing, share a lead if you have one, recommend them if you can, or simply remind them that their career doesn't define their worth. You have no idea how much that simple act of encouragement might mean, because sometimes the thing people need most isn't another interview. It's someone who believes in them until they can believe in themselves again. When we come back, we'll wrap up today's episode with Todd's take. I'll share the biggest lesson I've learned from this week's Threads post, why I believe better days are really ahead, and why I hope this podcast becomes more than just another career show. Stay with me. Before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with something that's been on my mind all week. As I read those Threads posts, I noticed something. Almost every person was talking about finding a job. That's what I was really seeing, was people searching for hope, searching for confidence, searching for reassurance, searching for someone to tell them, you're going to be okay. And maybe that's something we all need to hear once in a while. If you follow me for any length of time, you know this hasn't been an easy year for me. My career changed in ways I never expected. I had interviews that I thought went really well. I've waited for phone calls that never came. I've refreshed my email more times than I like to admit. I've questioned myself. I've wondered what my career was going to look like. And then this week, an automated Facebook email showed up in my inbox telling me that I'd been removed from full control of the company page from my previous employer. It was just one sentence, one automated notification, but it reminded me that life keeps moving. Sometimes whether we're ready or not. And after thinking about it for a while, I realized something. Maybe that email wasn't closing a door. Maybe it was reminding me to stop standing in the doorway. Because you can't fully embrace the next chapter if you're always looking back at the last one. If you're unemployed today, please don't let unemployment become your identity. You're still the same person you were before you lost your job. You still have experience. You still have talent. You still have value. A company's hiring decision doesn't determine your worth. It determines one thing: whether you got that job, not whether you're capable of doing a job. Those are two completely different things. One thing I'm proud of is that I didn't stop creating. Even while looking for work, I kept making videos. I started this podcast. I've shared my experiences, not because I have all the answers, but because I know someone out there is going through the same thing. If this podcast helps one person feel a little less alone, then it's worth every minute. And honestly, it's helped me too. It's given me a productive forum to which I can bide some of my time with, and it's given me a chance to meet some really interesting people. Sometimes the best way to remind yourself to keep going is to encourage somebody else. Before we end, I have one more observation. I think job seekers should get airline miles. Hear me out. Every application should be worth points. After 50 applications, you earn a free coffee. After 100, a free therapy session. We could all use therapy sessions. Us as job seekers applying for jobs and getting rejected, we could all use a free therapy session after that. After 200, a recruiter is legally required to call you back. And after 400, the CEO has to come to your house, shake your hand, and at least explain what happened. I know, it doesn't work that way. But wouldn't that make the process just a little more fun? If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment, send me a message. Tell me what's been the hardest part of your job search, and tell me what's kept you going. Because I have a feeling there are a lot of people listening who could benefit from hearing that they're not the only one. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's navigating the job market. And remember, your career is part of the story. It is not your entire story. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep believing in yourself. And no matter how many applications you've sent, don't stop believing that the right opportunity is still out there. I'm Todd Brooks, and this has been the Job Search Reality Series podcast. We'll see you next week, or maybe even later this week if a new idea for an episode pops into my head before then. We'll see you soon.
Just waiting on that call to come through. Feels like I'm hovering in the Athens blue. All these interviews and empty spaces, looking for foundation, not just traces. I'm ready to build my nest and settle down, find my own place to land in this classic city town.